Would you please rise as you're willing and able for our hymn from the Gray Hymnal, number 131, Love Will Guide Us. We bid you welcome. In this community of radical inclusion, we make space for what you believe and what you love. Your whole self is welcome here. In this community of open-hearted inclusion for all people, we do not expect you to think a certain way or restrict yourself to one set of beliefs. We only ask that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome to all who find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. We are so grateful that you are here. My name is Linda Brown. I'm your service leader today. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you for spending your Sunday morning with us, whether enjoying the service here in person with us or watching online. Today, we are very fortunate to have our guest speaker, Joanna Whaley, in our pulpit today. I'll tell you a little bit more about her later in the service. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to stay for coffee and conversation downstairs in Adams Hall, and a usher and greeter will point you the way. Please take a moment now to silence your phones, but we encourage you to not turn them off completely, but share your presence with us on social media. I have a few announcements today. The UUCF Quarterly Book Club returns on June 3rd at 7 p.m., and it's in Adams Hall. We are reading the 2005 Man Booker Prize finalist, Never Let Me Go, by Kazuo Ishiguro. Join us to discuss science, morality, and other ideas, as well as enjoy an evening of community together. Whether you have read it before or are reading it for the first time, I've read it. It's very interesting. Everybody should read it and come. We would love to have you. Reach out to Liz Knight with any questions.
What's the name again?
It's Never Let Me Go. We're excited to have Summerfest again this year on June 22nd here at UUCF. Please join us for fun activities, food, and camaraderie. And if you have any questions, see Becca Seaton.
Come see me also at Coffee Hour if you want to volunteer to do something.
Oh, even better. Save the date for this year's service auction being held on November 8th. This year's theme is Livin' in the Mitten. Now is the time to start thinking about what you might like to offer for events and services. See the weekly e-blast for more information. And of course, check out our social media on Facebook or Instagram, and also the UUCF website or emails for other announcements about upcoming events. So our chalice lighting today is titled When All the People, and comes to us from Motse. When all the people of the world love, then the strong will not overpower the weak. The many will not oppress the few. The wealthy will not mock the poor. The honored will not disdain the humble. The cunning will not deceive the simple. Our high technology of lighting the chalice can be challenging sometimes. Thanks. Please join me in reciting our UUCF mission statement, which can be found in your order of service. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, live with compassion. So now, please take a moment to settle in and feel your body as you are sitting, whether here in community or at home watching online. If you are willing and able, roll your shoulders, feel your feet on the ground, turn your head from side to side. Feel how you exist, how your body takes up space. No one else can physically be in the same space. You exist here, now. Imagine we have arrived. Imagine the lush river cannot swallow us or drown out the voices of our hearts. We have come to these eagle-nested shores to celebrate with the drums of dancing feet. We have come, a gathering of wings, arising out of the hard shells of loneliness and into the streets. Out of the violence and the rush of the trains and the drives between, out of the pain and the waiting rooms and the classrooms, the boardrooms and the bedrooms, we are birthing into light. We are holding our palms to the sky, awake and amazed that we can trust the hush, the hum, the hands we fall into like waves. We are listening to the sighs, to the aches of our histories, to the silences pinched beneath skins, and we are learning how to speak our own names, soft and slow now, turned over and over in our mouths until they shine on our tongues like silver pearls, until something inside us is a sail, is gratitude, billowing and free. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Your joy is multiplied in its sharing. Your sorrow is lightened in its sharing. The stories that are shared weave together to strengthen our community as we care for one another. You are welcome to come pick up a stone or stones from the table infuse or charge it with your joy or sorrow, and place it in the singing bowl, where its energy will ripple out to be held by all of us. If you'd like to verbally share something important on your heart, please come up and speak directly into the microphone. All are welcome to participate in any of these ways. Meditation song from the Gray Hymnal, number 391, Voice Still and Small. Our reading today is a quote from A. Powell Davies. I become more and more certain as the years go by that wherever friendship is destroyed, or homes are broken, or precious ties are severed, there is a failure of imagination. Someone is too intent on justifying himself or herself, never venturing out to imagine the way things seem to the other person. Imagination is shut off and sympathy dies. If we know what it is that makes other people speak or act as they do, if we knew it vividly by carefully imagining all that may lie behind it, we might not quarrel. We might understand. Often we could heal the wounds. But even where that is not possible, even where fuller understanding only leaves us rather sad and helpless, it would still give us the power to be kind. To act, yes, but still to be kind, to go on being kind. And in a harsh world, God knows that even that is something. Our speaker today is Joanna Whaley, who is a transgender woman and a former evangelical pastor who escaped Christian nationalism and survived conversion therapy. Since discovering her spiritual freedom, she continues to advocate for the liberation of all people to access the divine, regardless of who they are or whom they love. She hosts a daily podcast called the Joanna Whaley Podcast and is planning a run for political office in the near future.
Good morning, friends. As Linda said, my name is Joanna. I have a wild journey, and we'll get into a little bit of it here. And I was just joking with Linda, that last line, that whole thing about political office, that was not on my bingo card. If you asked me like 2 months ago, that was not at all in my life plans. Actually, just a week ago today, I was receiving my master's degree in theology. And I thank you. I currently am a resident at University of Michigan Hospital as a chaplain. So I do a lot of spiritual care work with people in trauma and end of life in both adult and pediatrics. And so that has been my world. But unless you've been living under a rock, it's been a little chaotic in our world lately, especially here in America. And if any of you had questions about that last time, we can talk afterwards. But I want to talk about that today. But I really wanted to talk about and bring you back to some of the early years when I was 6 or 7 years old. I knew something was going on with me, right? I was born in this body that looked like a boy, everybody thought was a boy. But there was something going on. I felt like my cousins who were girls on the inside, and we didn't have language for that when I was younger, right? I remember a moment when my mom asked me, "Are you gay?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't think so, Mom, right? We grew up in a Catholic family, and when I say that, some people are like, "Oh no," being this closeted trans girl, being in a Catholic family. But we had a very accepting, loving Catholic family, and that's what I believed Christianity to be when I grew up in Christianity. I believed that religious people were loving and open and accepting of all people because that's what my grandparents modeled for me. My grandpa went to seminary, and my grandma basically bossed the priests around and told them everything to do, right? And that was my world. So naturally, when I grew up as a teenager, I ended up going to this church that had drums, and it was loud rock and roll music. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? This is different. And I kind of fell in love with the environment. And that's when I started attending this kind of large mega church in my city. And everybody smiles and hugs, and we love you, we're so glad you're here. And on the door, all are welcome. And I'm like, okay, this is a great place to be. And at the ripe age of 17, I got hired as a pastor. What could go wrong, right? At this church, I get hired. And they're like, you'll be fine. You're going to just give some spiritual counseling to people in their 60s as a 17-year-old. Nothing could go wrong here, right? So there I am, 17 years old. I'm pastoring in this church of thousands of people. And I don't know what I'm doing, but I do believe that I'm loved. And on the surface of things, I was like, okay, they say this, and they say also, we want you to bring your full self here. We want you to be honest. We want you to be authentic. So over the years of being a pastor, it was about 2 years in, I started to hear things that I hadn't heard from the pulpit before. And I'll never forget it was a Christmas service, when the pastor kind of went on a rant about people like me, about something I had never talked about with anyone but my mother up until that point in my life, right? I hid being trans with sports and like doing the guy things, and grunting and all that stuff you're supposed to do. But I kept it inside because I wasn't sure of myself. But then I began to hear the pastor saying things that I could go to hell because of who I am on the inside. And I was like, oh no, I don't want that to happen. So I was like, I felt safe to talk to my pastors about this kind of deep struggle that I've had my whole life, not sure what to do with. And it was then that I was in college. I went to Eastern Michigan University. Go Eagles, anyone? Yeah, okay, see a couple here, good. And that was the first time I ever met a trans person. And here I am, this pastor, right? And I meet a trans person. I'm like, oh my gosh, who you are is how I feel on the inside. So I start to feel like I think that I have this tension going on. So I felt safe to talk to my pastors about this. It was a rainy night in February, and I'll never forget, we had a coffee shop in our church, if that gives you some context of what kind of church this was, right? So I'm sitting there, rainy night in February, and I just say, hey, I've never really felt like a man. And that was when I began, as you heard, a 15-year journey of conversion therapy. I'll never forget, it was just weeks later, I walked into this church in Roseville, Michigan, and across from a therapist, big air quotes for those that are just listening to audio right now. And the therapist asking why I was there. And I just laid it all out. Here's what I felt my whole life. And it was then that the therapist says, okay, we're going to read a Bible passage together. And by the end of our therapy time together, you will conform to God's image of you. You will conform to this idea of who you're supposed to be. And I remember feeling like very into this, right? Because I kind of was all in with the church thing and with the religion thing. I'm like, okay, whatever you say, whatever makes me the right person, right? So it's through that 15 years that I went through this journey and just feeling more and more low as a human being each and every time I walked out, feeling incredibly traumatized, but not really realizing it was happening to me. All that trauma was being masked in discipleship and becoming holy, as I come from a Christian tradition. And so I'll never forget, like, I went through kind of 3 distinct rounds of this conversion therapy. And at the end of the second one, they were like, you should just get married because that'll fix everything. Okay, why not? Let's do it. So the other thing that was happening was there was this religious kind of idea coming in, is if you give something words, you give it life. And this was a kind of a really out of context biblical principle that was taught to me. So all of a sudden, get married, you've never talked about it. So I'm walking into this disastrous situation, as you can imagine. I come out to my partner at the time, and it's just a mess, right? And I'm thinking at this point, I'm going back to, this was 2019, I'm thinking I'm going back to my 4th round of conversion therapy. And I'm sitting across from a Christian therapist, which I was only allowed to go see a Christian therapist, according to my pastors and everyone. So I went to see a Christian therapist, and he says, why are you here? I'm like, oh, great, here we go, And I say, why I'm here. And he stops me halfway through. He says, I need you to know that you're not sitting in conversion therapy right now. And, I start ugly crying at that point. My kids call those crocodile tears, like big tears start coming out, because the therapist goes on to tell me how much God sees the full me, how the divine sees the full me. And it was then that just a year later that I was able to be honest and tell the world who I really am. And I'm telling you, I have seen the divine come in more beautiful ways into my world and my life than I could have ever imagined, by simply just letting go and seeing where the divine takes me. rather than trying to conform to an idea. But sadly, there's so many in our world that feel they have to conform to a singular view of God, to a singular view of the divine, to an interpretation, to one dogmatic view. One of the most dangerous places I have ever been in my life is on a Wednesday night in someone's home in a Bible study who has never been trained in the Bible. It's one of the most dangerous places I've ever been in my life. Because there's this belief and this idea that you have to conform and land in the same place. Doesn't matter where you come from, we come from all walks of life, but you must land here in order to be accepted by God. And thank God I have gotten rid of that idea in my life. There's 3 things I want you to walk away with today. Is one, a good and faithful spiritual journey begins as a launching pad and not a landing place. As I was finishing my undergrad, I had this weird journey because of the conversion therapy. I lost all my motivation to excel in life really at all. I just kind of survived. I dropped out of college and I was like, well, I guess I'll just do this pastoring thing, right? Because it was easy at that point, which sounds weird to say that pastoring's easy, but it was at the time in my life. And so I went back and finished my undergrad, go Eagles, at Eastern. And my very last class, I remember it was a religions class. It was Women in Religions was the class. And I remember there was a Jewish rabbi in our class, and I'll never forget her saying to me this idea that in her tradition, she taught me about the Midrash and how it's an investigation of the Torah or the scripture, right? They took an investigative approach rather than a dogmatic one. And this rabbi in this Zoom class taught me so much about the divine because I had never really thought of scriptures or texts or hymns like this before in my life. I had never thought of it this way. And this idea, this midrash, and where I come from, as you can guess, I've gone through quite a spiritual journey in my life where when I did come out, I would say everything I knew about my faith was completely turned upside down. I would identify, and this term freaks people out sometimes, but I consider myself I was telling someone this morning, I consider myself a progressive Christian agnostic, which really throws people off. I don't say that in my spiritual care visits in the hospital, but it really is this idea of I don't know. How can I know, right? And so part of that whole journey has been because I've been willing to just say, you know what, I'm going to stop teaching, I'm going to stop using my spiritual journey as somewhere where I want everyone around me to land, but I would rather have my spiritual journey be the part where we begin to launch from and begin the conversation. In seminary, in my worlds, we call that negotiating with the text, or we call that negotiating with the topic or whatever we're wrestling with spiritually at the time, right? We negotiate with it. It's okay, it says this, or the poem said this. Let's negotiate with it. Let's start here and then just see where we are. And I find that to be a beautiful thing. And I think that it leads us to a diversity of thought. And that's the second thing, is that spiritual diversity is much more like the divine. Spiritual diversity are those different types of beliefs. And yes, even the ones that sometimes seem problematic, it is part of the diversity of thought in the spiritual journey. Throughout history, world history, there have been, now this number is rough, okay, it's a very rough number, but there's between 4,000 and 10,000 established religions in the world throughout history. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. And each and every one of them believing that they are right. You got first this church and second this church on 4th Street. And you got all these different churches all over the world believing that our interpretation is the right one. 10,000 different religious systems. I go to this church. A church that I belong to is in Nashville, Tennessee. And yes, I live in Michigan. I go online. But I'm very connected to this church. It's called Grace Point Church. And the church has a founding pastor. His name is Stan Mitchell. And Stan, there was this like random place on the website I found one day, and he gave this talk of when the church became open and affirming. This non-denominational church became open and affirming. You can imagine the chaos that ensued from that moment. But he gave this picture. He was talking about a dream that he was having where him and a bunch of people were like, okay, we're going to climb this mountain. God is this mountain, and we're going to climb it. And they toil, and it's hard. They camp and they try to survive through the weather and all the chaos of going up this mountain. And they get to what they see is a point, is the peak. And they're like, we made it. It's foggy all around them. There's clouds. They put their flag in the dirt. And they're like, look at us. We scaled the mountain. We got it. And just then, they put it like it was like a picture. We've understood God. We're at the top of the understanding of God. They get to that point. They put the flag in, and the clouds begin to dissipate. And all around them, they see hundreds of different groups of people with their flags at different heights. They're like, oh my goodness. And then they all turn around and look, and this mountain is going up infinitely, and you can't see it. And instead of us becoming discouraged and thinking, oh, well, our peak is higher than theirs, right? What we're invited to is the journey. We're invited to say, okay, I'm going to come down from this peak. Let me see what that peak is like. And I don't know if we can ever scale that eternal one up there. But the journey and who you're doing it with is what matters. You're on the mountain in the first place. And that leads me to the last thing, is that the divine is just way too mysterious for a central landing place. The largest, the oldest star that we as human beings have measured is believed to be 13.8 billion years old in a universe that is ever expanding. And you and me are sitting in this building on a rock, floating in the middle of that expanding vacuum of nothingness. Think about that. How dare we say we can know the vastness and the fullness of God? And yes, I just did get a seminary degree, and that made my professors really mad when I said those things. The one thing that I want you to walk away with today is don't think for 1 minute you can figure it out. Welcome to service. Welcome to service. Don't think for 1 minute you can figure it out, but remember that one day we may know, we may not. But that you stand before, you stand with, you stand in a divine history in an expanding universe forever and ever. And you have worth and value as you. Who you are, who you love, who loves you matters in that historical history of expanding space and nothingness. In this place, this earth that is real and tangible, and with the divine that is intangible and unknowable. It all matters. And who you are matters. And so today, wherever you are on that journey, whether you're like, I am long on that journey and I'm just here to enjoy the rest of my life and bring those with me, or maybe you're in here or listening and online and you are thinking, I don't know my way out of my religious landing place. You're being told you have to land somewhere. I want to tell you that maybe that landing spot is actually the new launching pad for you. So I'm here for you to listen anytime. And thank you all for having me with you this morning.
Thank you, Joanna. Unitarian Universalism is a grand vision of a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. That vision is embodied in a few large congregations, numerous mid-sized congregations, and many, many small congregations. No matter its size, every congregation depends on each of its members. Each one of you, by your commitment of time, energy, and resources, helps make that grand vision real. Individually and together, we are Unitarian Universalists, building a world filled with peace and justice, love and joy. This week we have a special Caring Sunday collection for a Freedom House family in need. Under the current administration, it has become nearly impossible to get the needed paperwork done, forcing asylees to survive without permission to work or government support. The Social Justice Committee will use your donations to help a struggling Freedom House family so they can survive while they work through the immigration system. As usual, checks and cash will be accepted. Checks should be made to UUCF with Caring Sunday in the memo line. And something a little different this week, you may also give via the QR code that's on the back of your order of service, but just make sure if you do that to include a note indicating that your donation is for Caring Sunday. Thank you for your continued support for families fleeing persecution. You are now invited to participate in the blessing of giving as the ushers come among you to accept the gifts of this congregation. Thank you. Please join me in reciting the offertory blessing that can be found in your order of service. To the work of creating beloved community within and beyond these walls, we dedicate ourselves and our offerings. And now, if you would please rise as you are willing and able to sing our final hymn from the Gray Hymnal, number 186, Grieve Not Your Heart. Just Change alone is unchanging. Whosoever wishes to know about the world must learn about it in its particular details. Knowledge is not intelligence. In searching for the truth, be ready for the unexpected. Change alone is unchanging. The same road goes both up and down. The beginning of a circle is also its end. Not I, but the world says it. All is one. And yet everything comes in season.